Welcome to Afros and Audio's Black History Month interview series. My name is Talib Jasir, founder and CEO of Afros and Audio Podcast Festival and the Vanguard Podcast Network. I'm excited to spotlight 29 outstanding indie podcast creatives and professionals who answer the call to be a part of this series. My guest today is Mikita Smith. Welcome and thank you for being here. How are you?
I am good. Thank you for, creating this space. I'm very honored to be here with you today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here with you as well. So let's get started. We want to talk about the podcast because the podcast has your name in it, so it's also telling people about you. So, can you share with our audience about your journey in starting Time for Tea with Makita and what inspired you to create a podcast dedicated to living in one's truth?
So I can't take credit for starting the podcast because I don't think I would have ever even came to the realization that, like I could do something like start a podcast. It all started with one question my husband asked me several years ago. He asked me if I could start a business, what would it be? And at the time I was thinking like, I don't want to start a business. Why you keep asking me these questions? But he made me really like look inside and think about some of the things that I am good at. I think sometimes when we think about scarcity, we think about not having enough, but sometimes our scarcity comes in the form of not thinking that we are enough. And I found that I was constantly thinking about that question, like off and on, until one day when I was like, what am I good at? What sparks me? What do I love to do? And I was like, I love to inspire people. I love to like help people move past whatever blocks they have and just create a voice that's uniquely themselves and just stand in their own truth. And I started doing like these live Instagrams, telling people about different ways they can use different teas and herbs to find calmness, just creating this space of redefining self-care and showing up for themselves. And my husband came to me, he said, you need to start a podcast. And I was like, you're crazy. I'm not doing that. Like, I don't even know what that means. I don't even know, like, what can I even do that in real life? And he was like, yeah, you could do it. And I sat down at my just had this old laptop, and I sat at my kitchen table, and I literally recorded a couple of episodes. At the time, it was on Spotify, and I didn't release them right away because I was like, Lord, this sounds terrible. And if you listen to some of the old ones, it was just like raw audio, just me just talking. And I came to him and I said, I actually love this. I think I'm going to actually do it in real life. Like I'm going to hit, like publish and do it. And when I did, he was like, I think you're ready. And he took me shopping to equipment store to get like a microphone, to get all the things that I would need. And I haven't stopped since. Like it's just been this roller coaster of self-discovery, not just for myself, but listening to other people's feedback and saying like how they felt inspired just by listening to my story as I share about myself. And just sometimes we don't see things in people that look like us doing what we do. And we think there's no avenue for us. But when we start seeing people showing up in those spaces and telling us that they see something in us, that we're like, oh, I can do this. Like, this is possible. So that's how I felt like throughout this journey. And it's a continued journey. Like, I'm learning more. And I told him the other day, I said, you know what? If I would have started thinking about actually doing research before starting the podcast, I probably never would have started because I probably would have gotten this comparison, like looking at someone else, what they're doing and how they're doing it. I would have never started it. But I'm one of those people, if I have an idea, it sounds good, it feels good, we're going to do it and we'll figure out the kinks and everything else as we go. But I'm all in.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. You learn as you grow. And a lot of us get stopped in the house space, right? And that will stop you before you even start. For all those listening out there, it will come, right? But you got to get in it. So, first of all, let's shout out this awesome dude who recognized you before you recognize this in yourself. Say his name.
Yes. Sam. So
Shout out to
shout out to
Sam.
Sam.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned this already, but let's expand on it. Your work revolves around empowering individuals to embrace their authentic selves. How do you incorporate this ethos into your podcast and what impact has it had on your listeners?
So I incorporate this by not just sharing like my personal challenges and struggles and things that I go through. I talk about, you know, things that I'm actually dealing with in the moment. Like I'm sharing that story and, like how I process some of the information. Like sometimes like we're so in our heads. We are so busy analyzing things that we don't allow emotions to flow into us and out of us and not hold on to them. So as I talk to people about like how I'm redefining self-care and showing up for myself, I picture myself and I want them to picture themselves too, like taking it out of the box, forgetting what society says, forgetting what other people will tell you about how you should be showing up for yourself and just listening to yourself. And then it's made me walk the walk. Like I can't just tell people stop analyzing and overthinking things, allow these emotions to flow in and flow out, and just step into whoever you feel you're being called to be. But now I have to show them that I am doing it, that I am experiencing it. And then with that experience, saying truthfully, man, life is life and right now, and I don't know where I'm at in this journey, but I'm trying to see myself through it and just being authentic and honest. And with that just being authentic in my voice, I people have reached out, things started in, walking your walk because full time, like a lot of people ask me, like, how do you do it? Like, how do you do everything? Because in my full time job, I'm a nursing supervisor, and I work in pulmonology, so we're working with lungs in the time of when nobody wants to deal with that, and it's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of things that are happening, and you're making time to meet with people, record a podcast, plan a podcast, like do all the graphics. Luckily, I have my husband who helps me do all the editing, but all the big work is on me for promotion and getting the word out there. But then it's also people just being honest that sometimes I don't feel like it. Sometimes I do think, what am I doing? Am I crazy? And then really diving deep in and saying, you know what, I need a moment to just hit pause. I need to step back for a second and just rediscover why I love this and why I want to show up each and every day. So having people ask me those questions makes me be real and honest. And I don't try to sugarcoat it because, it is what it is. And people can tell when you're not being truthful. They know when this is not it. you know, so just being honest and then giving them a little tip. Like, you don't have to do everything in one day. I'm a big believer in writing down notes and having a to-do list and being honest with myself that even if I don't finish everything on that list, maybe those things weren't meant to be done today. And then that gives someone else the permission to be themselves and say it's okay.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad that you continue to rediscover your why and and stay in the work because it is important work. So I want to talk about how you select your guests and topics, but I heard from this conversation so far that you started out solo and then you moved into interviews. So what was that process for you? When did you say, you know what, I want to bring in other people? Was it kind of immediate? What was that process for you where you decided, I want to bring in some more voices?
Well, I would say it was kind of immediate. Like I did the first 4 to 5 podcast solo by myself. And there is a certain energy when you're talking to someone else because you have your thoughts and your experiences, but having someone else's experiences and thoughts and perspective on certain ideas and situations helps you to look outside of what you perceive is normal or expectations. So I really wanted to have someone else's energy and there's someone else's thoughts to give other people perspectives. Everyone life is different. We go through life in a different way. Our journeys are all different. We have sometimes some of the same experiences. But I just wanted to bring someone else in to just really connect. And I like connecting with people, but I will say that the idea of having guests at first was it brought me a lot of anxiety because you're meeting new people and we all have this, well, maybe not all of us, but for me, I have social anxieties. So just meeting new people, sometimes I just get riled up and I want to make them comfortable. I want it to be, but sometimes I overthink the whole process. So it was a lot of anxiety and getting out of my own head around, having the conversations. And so I kind of just let myself just imagine that I'm talking with a friend. Like people just want to connect and share their stories. And that's what I'm giving them an opportunity to do, to connect and share their stories. So it was pretty I think pretty quick to move into guesting and having them on. And now as I move into going into season 3, I am scaling a little bit back from guest. I still want guest, but I still want to make sure that my voice is being heard as well. So it's going to be a little bit more of me and then sprinkling in guest.
Got you. I love that you mentioned social anxiety because that's another thing that gets in the way. But it's about the stretch, right? It's about stretching yourself and flexing the muscle until it becomes a part of you, at least compartmentalized for a podcast or for events. Yeah, I felt like maybe 6 years ago, you could not pay me money to show my face on camera, but I stepped into it and here we are. And that's the opportunity inside of this, finding self, finding your voice, saying, yeah, that's me, but this can also be me. So let's talk about the guests and topics for Time for Tea with Mikita. So to ensure diverse and inclusive conversations that uplift voices in marginalized communities, that's like part of the purpose and the mission for the podcast. Talk a little bit about that, and especially in your selection process.
So I like to choose people that have a unique story. I know that, everyone's story is different, but I don't want to choose like the same story. I want to hear from people that have a unique experience that um, can not only just share their story, but walk people through their story. Because sometimes, we can hear a story, but when we hear sometimes you can hear the same story twice. But depending on who's telling the story, sometimes hits us differently because you can relate to being in that situation. You can relate to knowing someone that's been there. So when if whether a guest reaches out to me to ask to be on my podcast or whether I reach out to someone else, I like to do a little research. I like to see what are they doing right now? Like, even if they haven't been a guest on anyone else's show, are they doing some lives? Like, what does their feed look like? What are they talking about? How can we come together and create something that's totally different, but still helps them stay true to who they are, and also gives my audience a glimpse into someone else's perspective in their story and see themselves in that. So my selection process, I really have almost an open door policy where if you have a story, you can share it with me. I like to meet with people first because I want people to feel like they know me. So when when we start recording, I want them to feel like they are comfortable. What I found is when you just bring people on and they don't know you and you just literally met them, the conversations don't get real juicy and good until towards the end. And then they start like spilling all this good stuff, and you're like, man, we're an hour in. It's got to go. Like, we got to stop. So just having that opportunity to have a conversation before, get comfortable with one another. And when I'm getting comfortable and getting to know people, I'm sharing too. Like I'm being vulnerable. And I think sometimes we have to be vulnerable with the guests and people we're bringing on because we don't want people to feel judged. We don't want people to feel like all eyes are on them, but you're accepted here. Your story is valuable, and so are you. And my community is all about, acceptance and recognizing that we're all different, but we're all here to, as they say, sometimes you have to, flame the flame, right? Because, you got to keep the fire burning. And the more support you have, the more people that are gathering around and supporting you on your mission and your story and helping that story get out there, the more impactful it'll be. So I truly believe in making impact. And sometimes in smaller communities, when we're talking about diversity, some voices don't get heard, some stories don't get heard. And I want to be a space where no matter the story, no matter where you're from, your story can be heard.
That's awesome and so important. How has your hosting your podcast contributed to your understanding of the value of your own voice? And in what ways has it influenced your personal and professional growth?
I've always loved to talk, probably a little too much. And I can always remember, like, even as a kid, I used to pretend I had a talk show, and my cousins and everybody would have to pretend they were on my talk show. But that was more of me dreaming as a kid. As you get older and we put different, well, I guess expectations, but when we start to think of things as pass or fail, good or bad, we start to see ourselves and our voice and what we say differently. So as I got older and I stepped into podcasting, one of the first things I said to myself is like, who would actually hit play? Who wants to hear what I have to say? Will it be valuable? Will it be impactful? And I realized that if I didn't believe it was impactful, then I couldn't share the story with anyone else. So I had to believe that what I was saying and the people that I was going to bring onto the show were also impactful and would make a difference. Even if you change if you change one person, if you touch one person, you are making a change. So I had to first believe in the power of my voice, the power of my impact, even if it was considered to be a small ripple. But I'm a big thinker, so I'm like, we dropping big boulders and rocks in there. We're making big impact. So, I had to really believe it for myself. And when we believe that we're impactful, when we believe that we're making a difference, we're able to share what we're doing, how we're out in the community. And that's how you really build a community. So for me, it's just been this roller coaster because it's not always straight. You start up here and you're like, yeah, I'm amazing. Like I'm out here like making a difference. And I feel like, I'm getting all this great feedback. And then there's a day when you're like, am I really making an impact? Like, how big of an impact am I really making? So it's a roller coaster at times. And sometimes I have to step back and get out of my own head and just really focus on how I want to show up that day and how I'm willing to show up because, I truly believe in asking myself each and every day, what impact you want to make today? What version of yourself do you want to be? Um, and then going out there and being that version of myself that still like shows up for other people, but shows up for myself as well. But I found that podcasting has gave me this new, like a different confidence. Like I'm confident in my ability to speak and to, connect with people. But now I realize that not only can I connect and speak to people, but I can help other people connect and speak to people while not losing their voice, this is a big world. It's noisy. Things get really loud really quick and staying true to who you are is very important. So I feel like podcasting has just been this journey of continuing self-discovery, of getting to know myself and the power that my voice has.
Wow, that was a masterclass in self-actualization, creating for yourself first and allowing it to be what it is for the people that discover it. Like it's meant for them, it's meant for you. And that gets to be enough because how it's going to expand, we don't even know sometimes those ripple effects, who you're encouraging, what they're applying in listening to your conversations and the voice and the stories of your guests. It's podcasting in that way is such an important medium because of that. So I love that that's your being. Not a lot of people get that. Let's talk about some of the guests that you have. And you mentioned specifically in the intake form, you've had some significant interviews, like the one with Jessica Cooperman, CEO of She Podcasts. We love Jessica over here. She's a dope human and even a contributor of Afros and Audio. So, what insights or learnings did you gain from this experience, and how has it influenced your approach to podcasting?
So I think the biggest thing was that anytime like I get a guest, like I'm super cool until like when it's time. And then I was like, oh my gosh, it's Jessica Kuferman. Like I'm interviewing like this one of the CEOs of She Podcast. Like, breathe. And then she comes on and I'm like, oh, she's just so down to earth. Like oh my gosh. And I think that's just the reality sometimes that we sometimes think that people are like so far like ahead of us and like, but everyone is just, we're all human. We're all just human. And it was just being able to have a conversation. And we talked a lot about like brand identity and owning your voice, but also we talked a lot about AI and She Podcast and what the statement that it's been for women in podcasting. So from just having that conversation with her, it was just like another opportunity for me to just connect with someone else, another woman that is in podcasting, understanding the differences and what that journey has looked like, and just hearing someone else's story and their perspective and how they got started. And sometimes we think it so differently. We don't, sometimes we see someone else and we're like, they're already there, and we don't see like the steps and all the struggles and all the little things that went into getting them there. So just having that conversation was just like, wow, like, yeah, I know exactly what that feels like, getting started, getting launched and trying to get that momentum going and continuing the momentum, because like that's after you get the momentum, it's like you got to continue it. So it was just like really cool to like have that person to connect with and just be like, you're human like me. Like we're all in this boat together, and we're all just we're all supporting each other, and we all want to see each other win. So it was very insightful, and she is amazing.
She really is. So yeah, thank you for sharing that about Jessica, and definitely concur. She's an awesome person. As you look forward to the future, what are your aspirations for Time for Tea with Makita, and are there any new themes or initiatives you are excited to explore in upcoming seasons?
So in this season, we are exploring actually letting go. That is my power word for this season in my life. And when I talk about letting go, I just don't mean fear, doubt. I mean, I'm talking about like anything that is not going to propel you forward, just letting go of certain mindsets, stepping into your own truth. So I am going to be big and heavy on that this season, and just doing things afraid, doing things. I said messy, but like sometimes it is messy. Sometimes it's a whirlwind, but doing it anyway. So that's what I'm really focused on in this season. Where I would like to see Time for Tea continue to grow is to continue to build a community around uplifting voices and helping people to find their voice. And I really want to, and I've been talking about this for a while, and so I'm going to have to do it, um, which is actually take my podcast on the road. And I don't just mean like, I don't want to just go to state from state, because I want to go to other countries. And I just want to have like this live forum of Time for Tea with Mikita, and make it really all about the audience and having their voices heard and sharing, you know, people in the audience's story. Like if you have a story, here's your moment. Like let's hear it. But just having that opportunity to give people that may not be recognized, because we know a lot of people stories that are well known, but we have people in our community that have amazing stories about amazing things and things that, not just struggle, because we hear a lot about struggle, but I want to hear the good things, the things that make me feel empowered to continue to keep going. So those stories that offer empowerment, sure, everybody has a hiccup and challenge that happens, but I want to hear not just the worst part of it, but the most empowering part of it too, to be inspired. Because sometimes we stop at the challenge and we never see the good things that's going to happen at the end. So for me, it's just continuing to grow, making sure that my community continues to grow, and hopefully taking this podcast on the road around the world and helping other people that don't have a voice or feel like they don't have a voice, giving them an opportunity to share their stories.
That's awesome. And however we can support that dream, that vision, that goal, we're here for it. That's an awesome idea. And I had an interview with another person for this series that I will share with you, because she's doing just that, and ended up in Tanzania and South Africa and had these wonderful conversations. So I'm going to connect you and also make sure that you hear how she's done that. For right now, just so it can say, listen, possibility. So, drawn from your knowledge and your advice about embracing change for growth, what specific guidance would you give to podcast hosts and audio professionals who are just starting their journey?
Hit record. Hit record. Most people ask the question like, where do I start a lot? Like, where do I start? And sometimes I'm a little confused by the question, because it does not have a whole lot of context. And I always say, start where you're at. Start with whatever you got. Um, and start with what speak about things that you can actually contribute to the conversation. But most importantly, just hit record and start. You don't need to spend lots of money because I think a lot of people get caught up in wanting to have all this stuff. You don't need to have all the stuff. You need a microphone that's really good. If you got to sit in your closet, sit in your closet. Um, get your laptop. You don't need, a big Mac computer, whatever you have. And as long as you are speaking authentically and sharing something that you actually know about and you're offering something of value, people will listen, they will tune in. So just show up as yourself, whether regardless of whether it's a podcast to be empowered or it's, a comedy special, whatever it is, just show up as you, start where you are and be yourself and don't apologize for it.
There you go. Don't apologize for it. It is what it is. I am who I am. Take it or leave it. That's the beautiful. My wife always says there's a lid for every pot, right? And I
Mhm.
love that she's talking about relationships when she says that, right? But that's transferable to podcasting, right? Your audience is choosing you. And that's important. Like it's important to recognize even the 1 and 2 that choose you for the first month or 2 months or a year, they've chosen, and that's a responsibility, and it's an opportunity to expand that. So absolutely, and you will
And
not ever know that if you stay off the mic. You'll never know. Go ahead. You were gonna say something.
yes. Well, I was going to say also don't get caught up in like the number of downloads and stuff either,
Mhm.
because, just keep going. If you do it because you love it, no matter how many downloads or listeners you seem like you're getting, if you keep going, it'll build. You will build.
Absolutely, and you'll learn how to build as you go, but you can't build nothing without starting something. Let's talk about celebrating Black voices in podcasting. This is for Black History Month. So, given your involvement with like the Black Podcast Association, thank you very much for being a community member and showing up for Afros and Audio. Thank you once again, and shout out to Sam for being there as well. Your dedication to Black history and culture. How do you see the landscape of podcasting evolving for Black voices and creators?
I feel like it's expanding. So when I first got into podcasting, I didn't realize how many Black voices were out there. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you don't get to see all the people, all the brown and Black people that are in podcasting. So the more I got into it, the more I started like listening and looking for my niche, my group, my community. I started recognizing that there are a lot of Black voices in podcasting. And that led me to the Black Podcasting Association and Afros and Audios. When I was thinking about my first year, like I want to attend a podcast conference to be that was diverse, that included diversity and, just a space for Black people and their voices. And they was like, this is like a recommended one. It actually came up recommended in Buzzsprout. And I was like, I gotta be there. Like I gotta be a part of this. And not just for myself to learn, but also it was like an opportunity of how can I support someone else? How can I connect? Because I'm always I try to be as intentional as I can possibly be around any decision that I make. So if I'm gonna show up, I want to learn, of course, and to grow, but I also want to make sure that I am there to support the next person because your support looks different. We sometimes it's just sharing someone else's commenting, speaking about what someone else is doing and how they're making an impact. So I just wanted to make sure that I was supporting the next voice that was coming into podcasting or a voice that I may not have known about that is doing amazing things and just, shout them out and then just share what they're doing to make an impact, because we don't know unless we start having conversations. So I felt like the more that I grow, the more that I am able to reach out to other podcasters that look like me, whether they have the same experiences or not, but I can, reach out, ask them for, even ask them for help. Like, hey, how are you doing this? And I don't mind asking for help. I'm not that shy of a person that I won't reach out and say, hey, we met and so and so. And I was just wondering, I know you talked about this, but can you help me with this? Or, Can we link up or talk or chat? And at the same time, how can I help you? Because, there's always, something you can do to help the next person. So I feel like, as we're growing in the podcast space, that it's evolving, and the more young people that are getting to know podcasting. Just I have my daughter as a guest. She goes to Norfolk State, so shout out to the HBCUs. But just I had her as a guest on my podcast, and it was so amazing to hear her voice and her thoughts, and how young people are adapting to podcasting and finding their voice, and then looking at her thinking like, I can do a podcast and bring my own flair of identity and topics and inspiration. So I feel like it is continuing to grow, but we still continue to need people to support and be a part of that community to help it grow.
Absolutely. And shout out to the Gen Zers, and to get more of them interested in podcasting is the goal, because it's not only about this. Podcasting is a viable career. And if
Mhm.
we don't get more engineers and more editors and, that sort of thing too, that is also an opportunity for young people in this industry. We got to make sure they know that. And that's part of the reason we're here. So, any closing thoughts, any promotions you want, any shout outs to another podcast that you want to give before we close out the conversation?
Well, I would just say, for anyone that would like to connect with me, be a part of my community. I have a Facebook community called Take Back Your Power, which is all about being a support within the community to help you to grow your voice, and just be a part of something that is sometimes bigger than us. I have a newsletter, Tuesday Tea, where I give out different tips and just ways that you can find out what's happening um, in the Time for Tea with Mikita's world. And of course, you can find me on Instagram at just plain Mikita Smith, keeping it simple.
All right, awesome. Well, it's been great talking to you. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too. On the halls of Afros and Audio, I'm just kind of moving from one thing to the next. And I do remember you coming up to me, but that being about it. But this opportunity is what I live for, to get to know the members of the community a lot more, because there are some brilliant and awesome folks inside indie podcasting. And this is about amplifying them, and you're one of them. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
Well, thank you for having me. I am honored to be a part of something that's bigger than me.
Absolutely. All right, I'm going to close this out. I want to give a big thanks to our Afros and Audio and Black Podcast Association members for supporting our commitment for community and collaboration. If you'd like to join the Black Podcasters Association, the link will be in the description. And if you want to join us at the 6th Annual Afros on Air Podcast Festival, visit afrosandaudio.com. Follow Afros and Audio on all social media channels. You can find and follow me at Talib Jasir on Instagram. Thanks again, Mikita, for being a part of Afros and Audio's Black History Month interview series. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.